congratulations to the volleyball team. I was just talking to a couple of players. It's the first time, what we always try to do, usually a soccer game and a volleyball match starts at the same time. So I always like to go to the volleyball match first because you can't time volleyball. And I know when the second half, basically, of a soccer game starts. You go there, it's the first time ever gone to the soccer game, come back, and they're still playing for the game. They must have been the longest games ever. That's a big win. That's a great job. It's been a neat season with the team. As you can see, our volleyball team is strong and getting stronger every day. It's neat to watch. Every single match has been competitive. They've been in them. They're fun to go see. They're doing a great job. So good job, coach and all the players. Nice work. Welcome, and thank you all for being here, and especially for all the members of the alumni and the group that have helped create the Penny Fall Memorial Fund. This is really neat in support of volleyball and softball, but really we're here to name a volleyball locker room. And this is the first locker room we've ever named, and that's a really neat thing. And as we know, it's pretty neat that's being named for Penny. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I'm going to divert off my script before I go to my homework here that I'm supposed to do. I just want to say that for me, I was really lucky. I got to know Penny in 3 different ways. And the first couple hardly count because as a student, I got here in 1971, I was scared to death of her. So I spent 4 years pretty much just scared of Penny, like I think all of us, all the guys, at least on the lacrosse team we all were. We just walked a big path around whenever she was having practice or anything. And you know, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't realize she had only gotten here 2 years before. You know, so as a student, you just think every coach and faculty member are just old people. And they're just old. But really, when you think about it, she was pretty young, and her career, she was just getting going with that. Then I got to know her in a different way as a young coach. In 1978, I was 25 years old, and I became the head lacrosse coach here. And I was still scared to death of her. So I spent those 4 years just pretty much, we didn't have a lot of conversations. I was pretty intimidated and just kind of was careful of going around. So I didn't really get to know Penny until I came back in 1994 as an athletic director. And then we worked together. And that was really a wonderful opportunity for me to get to know who she really was. And right away, one of the first things I did was make her the permanent senior woman administrator because it didn't make any sense to me that she wasn't, and she should be. That's who she was here. So we traveled a lot because we went to all the conference meetings together, and we'd go to the NCAA convention together, which meant flying all over the place. And Penny was an interesting person to travel with, by the way, as you can imagine. And the people who played for her, I'm sure already know that. And there's some stories we could tell about that, but I won't go that long into it. But anyway, what I did, it gave me the opportunity to get to know what a special person she was. And as we were talking about, Joan and I earlier, in spite of her very tough and scary outside, she had a heart as big as a Volkswagen. And she was just a sweet person. She didn't like to let her shell down much. That was just part of who she was. I learned that she was a professional level golfer and could have and would have played on a tour at that time. Unfortunately for Penny, she had a lot of physical challenges, injuries and things that just made it very difficult for her to do that. So instead, she put her time and passion here. What I also then got to know is really what Penny's history was. And again, you don't know what you don't know. As a student, I didn't pay much attention to what was or wasn't going on in women's athletics in the 70s. I knew there wasn't much. We kind of knew that. There weren't many teams, and they were just getting going. What I didn't know is that Penny is the one that fought and built and created every single one of them. When she came here in 1996, there were this many women's varsity teams here. And she came here with a charge to create that. Now, she had that charge and that challenge, but she didn't get a whole lot of support to do it. That's the difference in it. And so Penny, we were talking about it, persistent is a mild way to put it about Penny, and that's what you needed to be in those days. She was a pioneer and she was a fighter. And in her time here, so she was here from 1969 to 2001, as you can see. We went from 0 women's sports to having rowing, tennis, volleyball, softball, lacrosse, field hockey, swimming, basketball, sailing, and soccer. Only those last couple have been added after Penny was tragically killed in 2001. So those others were here and built during Penny's time, which is really Penny's credit for doing that. She coordinated the women's athletic program, coached volleyball, softball, tennis, and cheerleading. It also doesn't say that she also did the laundry, lined the fields, drove the vans, did the scheduling, did the budgeting, and anything else, fundraising, anything else that needed doing for those programs. So for what you guys are used to now, it was a completely different world. And Penny was one of those people back in those days who was willing to take on the fight and to go from scratch, literally scratch, to build what you guys now have a good advantage of seeing what there is and be part of. In 1984, she was recognized by the Governor of Maryland for her work in achieving greater gender equity in Maryland's educational institutions during the first decade of Title IX. And Title IX, you know, people now, you just kind of hear that thrown out, everything Title IX this or Title IX that. Title IX was actually passed in the 70s, but don't for a second think that when Title IX was passed, the next day anything changed. Not at all. It wasn't even actually passed for sports. That had to come into play later, and even then, it took a while. It took quite a while. In 1997, Penny was the 5th woman to be inducted into the Hall of Fame here at Washington College. And that was a pretty neat night, by the way. So Penny is the reason why all of that happened in the 70s, 80s, and even through into the 90s. She was the force behind it, the push. She was the passion for it. She supported every single team here. Her real loves were volleyball and softball. And I have to say, I think volleyball was really her first love with it, which is one reason why the volleyball locker room is the appropriate place to start. Maybe we'll talk about the next step, but wonderful first place to start. And I'm really excited that her name's going to be on that locker room. I know all of you are. And now, to let the people who made this happen talk, Joan Burry, would you come up, please? Class of 1980.
All right, one of the things that Emily Kate asked me to do was tell you what it was like to play volleyball here in the 1970s. First of all,
like today, right, Jen?
well, I would like to point out that we played volleyball the way that God intended volleyball to be played. There were 15 points in a game, and you had to serve to get a point. The other thing about playing volleyball, when we played volleyballs, we only had 2 volleyballs. No, seriously, you guys are laughing, but this is true. We had volleyballs for practice, but they were kind of worn out. God forbid you let them touch your foot, because Miss Ball, I never called her Penny. Miss Ball would not be happy with you. But we had 2 for games, and I was talking to Sue Briggs, who was our manager. I said, did you know where those were kept? She goes, no. I think we decided in a conversation that Penny had them in bed with her or something. We don't know where they were kept, but honest to goodness, I think there were 2 that we used for games, and they only came out for games. When we were watching today and we saw the ball boys, we thought they were cute, and they're wiping the balls down, the guys got new balls, we're like, wow, we had some volleyballs like that. And then when you seniors got the volleyballs, we're like, wow, no one ever gave us a volleyball. You know, that was kind of cool. So seriously though, when we played volleyball here, we weren't all volleyball players when we started. Now I was asking my teammates, and unfortunately a lot of them said yes, we played volleyball in high school, but I'm looking at Mandy right there over Jamie's shoulder. She played basketball. And so she wanted to play sport. And when she came here, like Brian said, there wasn't anything to do. You had to play volleyball if you wanted to play sport in the fall. And so Mandy came out and she played volleyball. She was good, although she did remind us that there was a one-arm volleyball player because she dislocated a shoulder. But this Mandy was behind her, but that was not me. Anyway, so, I mean, Mandy was the captain in our senior year. She was a very fine volleyball player, but she learned to play here. Now, did you all play volleyball in high school? You did, you did. And were you recruited to come here? Well, Cheryl's laughing. We didn't have that. We didn't have that. We came here to school because we wanted to go to school here. We looked around because we played a sport in high school and said, what can we do? And we said, well, we'll play volleyball. So that's what we did. Another thing that was different then, and this is an aspect of Title IX, like Brian said, when Title IX came into force, things did not change overnight. So here we are, basketball players, tennis players playing volleyball, and who did we play? Well, we played anybody. It didn't matter. So we played Anne Arundel Community College, Essex Community College, the Naval Academy, the University of Maryland, Towson,
Yeah.
Delaware.
Wyandotte.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in a tournament with West Virginia University. We stayed in games with them, but it was like that everywhere. And the women, like Penny Fall and the other schools, they had to do all the things she did. But we saw it here. And it was an interesting time. So a couple things about just playing here day to day. So what did we experience day to day? Well, we weren't allowed to use the gym until the men were done. So we practiced from 6 to 8. And even when men's basketball hadn't started, we practiced from 6 to 8 because at least it was the same time, and we learned to digest our food quickly because we went to dinner at 4, which meant we did get to go behind the line in the old-fashioned cafeteria and choose what we wanted, but you soon learned that there were certain things you should not eat before Ms. Fall was going to make you run sprints. So we learned to eat well playing volleyball here. One of the things we noticed when we watched y'all play was that your shoes matched. We thought that was really cool. So y'all had shoes, they matched each other on your feet, and then everybody else on the team, your shoes matched. That was really, really neat because we didn't have matching shoes. Now, I believe when I was a sophomore, Miss Fall discovered that there were volleyball shoes. And so I think she had enough money to get the captain and the co-captain, maybe some other upperclassmen shoes. So they had shoes that matched. And then later on, the next year, I had to pony up money for one shoe, and she bought the other shoe.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the men were doing. We can talk about fairness, but I know that I had to pay for my own shoe. And it did match the shoe that she paid for, so that was really good. I guess the other thing that struck us today watching you all, I wrote this morning, but this came to pass today. Do you have more than one uniform shirt by chance? Well, we had the one, and the criminal prison shirt. That's what we had, and if we went away for a weekend, if our managers couldn't get the laundry done, we wore them the next day, and that's probably how we won the next day because no one wanted to be near us. So, but that's just how it was. We had a really great time, but it wasn't, in our estimation, especially talking with each other afterwards, it wasn't fair. I mean, the men, and we were comparing ourselves to the men. I'm looking at Brian, sorry, Brian. The opportunities for them were so much better than the opportunities for us. And so when Penny died in 2001, a lot of us who are here in the room today came back for the memorial service, and then we went out to dinner and we said, what can we do about this? And for most of us, I think that Penny Fall was our major tie to the college. I know I live in North Carolina. My parents live in New York, and when I would drive north, most people would take 95. I would come through here, and I would stop to see her. I didn't come for any other reason except to see Penny Fall. So that was one aspect of our conversation. Another one was that, she made us successful as athletes despite the cute little outfits we wore. But the other thing that she did for us, and a lot of us went on to graduate school or got jobs, and we have some lawyers and investment bankers in the group. So you made your application to graduate school, and you said, well, I need a letter of recommendation. What do I do? Well, I guess I'll ask Miss Fall. Well, she would get on the phone and call whoever she needed to call. It freaked us out. Like, oh my God, my volleyball coach is calling the chairman of the math department at NC State to get me into graduate school. She did that. She made an impression. And she was so invested in us. So we decided we're going to establish this fund, and then Maggie and I were sent off to deal with the development office. And I will tell you, when we dealt with them the first time and said we'd like to establish this fund in Penny's memory, the response we got was, well, that's not really a good idea. So we said, well, we still want to do it, so what's the problem? And they said, well, you're going to have to raise a lot of money. We said, well, how much? They said, $25,000. $25,000. And I said, well, how long do we have? 3 years. Huh. So we were done a lot sooner. And it was very frustrating dealing with that office. So I want to actually call out Emily Kate Brown in the development office because Emily Kate Smith, because I met her as Emily Kate Brown. She's been great. So every time anybody from the development office comes through North Carolina, I get a call. They want to meet with me. We go out. They buy me dinner. I really go out for the food. And they ask me what I want to do. And every time we do this, I say I want to put more effort into getting more money into the fund. And why do I want to do that? Well, my vision for this fund is that at some point, it's probably after I die, I'd like to see it happen sooner. There'll be so much money in the fund that I don't have to get an email from Jamie asking me to fund knee pads or nets. I want the fund to pay the day-to-day expenses of women's athletics. Brian's hearing this for the first time. I also want there to be so much money in the fund that we can put up needed outfield walls for the softball team or other things that the women really need. And what motivates me is really the example set by Ms. Ball. So in closing, I want to tell you, I'm a project manager by trade, which means I get things done on time, within budget, and high quality. I have all the responsibility for getting things done. I have zero authority. So I have to motivate people. I hope I've done a good job with that. But when I talk to my teams at work, I like to give them some takeaways. So this is what I want you guys to do. If you haven't given to the fund, please give to the fund. But I want you also to think tactically. So the fund is strategic. In the long term, I hope that we can make my dream come true, really carry on the legacy of Penny Fall. But tactically, I know that Jamie and Lacey, the softball and volleyball coaches, they're the worst funded programs. I want you to consider when they ask you for money, tell your parents if you're a player, kick in a little because they are the worst funded, they're in the worst shape is what I understand in terms of funds. So please try to give tactically, set some money aside for strategic support of the Penny Fall program and fund. And if you have any ideas of how we can make this work better, raise money faster, please talk to Emily Kate and folks in the development office, talk to Brian. Really appreciate everything everybody's done to get us this far. So thank you in closing for your support of the fund. And thank you, Brian, for your thoughtful administration of the fund. I really like everything we've spent the money on. And Emily Kate, thank you for everything you've done to make this a success so far. And good job, volleyball team.
Thank you, Joan. And I spent a lot of time trying to fundraise for lots of different sports, and I can tell you, when they started this, I said, no way. Never get this. Too hard to do to get there. And one of the reasons it's hard for volleyball, softball, sports like that is you don't have 75 years of alumni to go back to. So it's a much smaller group, so it just makes the challenge so much more difficult. So wonderful job. There's a bunch of persistent ladies in here, and I think Joan's kind of the push keeping them going, but it's all great. And everything she just described is wonderful future. So when you guys become alums, think about this. This is where you want to give back and be thinking about what your experience has meant for you and then what it can mean for the next generation coming after you. So now, if people wouldn't mind going back, if you don't have one already, this is a great time to be able to honor Penny Fall. We're going to have the Penny Fall volleyball locker room. So let's toast to Penny.